Okie doke. So I want to welcome and thank those from all around the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and China, who are up, many of you up before dawn, and some of you in the middle of the night, to help grow meaningful service learning. In spite of the COVID challenges and a magnificent range of new teaching, there's been a magnificent range of new teaching and learning potential. So the Educators Consortium this year is planning 3 more Zoom conversations in November, January, and February, and hopefully a live workshop in April, which will be our first in 2 years, actually. But this year, we're going to focus on critical topics, including food and ecology, race and land acknowledgement, and earth democracy, all of which actually are connecting by one thread. We're all understanding this is all one world and one issue. But new this year, we'll be providing a video, a document, or a resource for you to process in advance of gathering on our Zoom workshops, our Zoom conversations, to deepen our dialogues and to extend more meaningful income. So we think that we'll provide you something that's really food for thought and something that will be meaty to grab onto and that you can use as tools. All of our explorations involve techniques and tools you can use in your classrooms or with those you're trying to outreach to. That we really make a concentration on providing you with things that you can take away and use. And so hopefully the little things that we do online and in chats are all tools that you'll be integrating into your programs. So, the records and supporting documents for all of our conversations are at www.discoverecsl.org. So any of you who've missed prior meetings or want to check in on information that was provided or whatever resources, it's so dense. We have so many resources now. It's really easily accessible online, and I just wanted to call your attention to that. So moving along, this is our first fall meeting, and our first fall meeting, we always do a little remembrance and honor someone special. So Ann Nelson was a beacon of inspiration for ECSL. Her contributions resonate most purely in these amazing spirit dolls. So here's a spirit doll. That she individually hand-stitched and personalized for an outstanding ECSL representative, and we acknowledge every year. Her legacy lives on through her sisters continuing to produce a doll, and more importantly, through those of you who continue to light the way for others in the Educators Consortium for Service Learning. So one of our longest contributors, who's participated in most of our strategy council sessions, hosted one of our most valuable workshops on poverty at her school, and who not only attended most all our workshops for over nearly 20 years, but documented them with photographs, is being thanked today by earning the Ann Nelson Spirit Award with her doll Romo, Swahili for Spirit. A contribution to a nonprofit of her choice is being made. So ECSL deeply values and thanks Jenny Lapidus from Los Encinos. So Jenny, wave, let everybody know, there she is. Unmute if you'd like. You're muted. Jenny, you're muted.
To have a part of Anne in my life was a treasure, just a treasure, just a treasure. And to have this, there's no words. I don't feel like I've earned it, but I'll take it anyway.
Well, you have earned it.
Thank you. You've helped me with so much personal growth. I thank all of you so on behalf of all of you during the year of COVID, I will accept this, but thank you so much. And I love Dan just like you did.
Romo, your spirit doll
Romo
will be on her way to you this week.
I can pick it up from you as well.
Yeah. Okay. So she'll be coming towards you.
That was a lovely gesture. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for all you provided. So with that being said, we're going to move into, we always start our meetings with just a centering moment to catch our breath and being able to focus. There's so much going on, so much buzz. So we're doing something different today. Typically we do almost a yoga type exercise breathing, but today we thought we'd bring you something new. And we're turning to Yo-Yo Ma. And Yo-Yo believes that culture is the way we express ourselves and understand each other, and that can bind us as one world, and especially that we are one world on this screen right now. we are going to engage with his Bach cello. It is 3 minutes long. And it's so funny how your patience is like a minute and 3/4. But I invite you to sit back, just relax, enjoy the flow of music as it opens your creativity and swells your heart. There's a visual that accompanies this. It might not be technically perfect, but the link is also on the Google Doc that we provide throughout this meeting. So you can always visit it later. And Kathy is going to launch for us,
Hopefully.
hopefully within a few seconds.
Yeah, give me just 1 second, but I'm determined to make this work. Clearly, music translates to all languages, so that was quite beautiful.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to step in. I'm Marissa Najarian. I'm one of the advisors for ECSL. And if the video was a slightly choppy, which actually matched with the staccato music, so we'll take it. And one thing that may not have flashed for you on the screen was this came from a campaign from the British Council of Japan. And they had a hashtag at the end that says culture connects us. And I think what really resonates with me.
Verizon has been named America's most reliable network metrics.
No worries, Kathy. But I think the thing that resonates with me is that when I joined ECSL almost a decade now ago, I joined because service learning is a culture, and the people and the culture of this space really resonated with me. And so I'm just glad to be a part of it. And it also made me think about how we want to make sure that we continue that idea of having a common language. And so, dance can be a common language, as you saw, food, music. So what is the common language of service learning? And so we're going to spend a little bit of time, since this is our first meeting of the year, to kind of establish that foundation and create that ethos and that common language for service. And what we're going to do today is that figure out how we can identify what the spectrum of service opportunities are by looking at all the variations of service, everything from community service to service learning to community engagement. Somewhere along those lines, we're all engaging in some version of that. And so we're going to engage in a community activity to help us define what community service and service learning are. So by defining where we are on that spectrum, it can help us move forward to the next level, to the next kind of echelon up. So I'm going to invite Leanne, who is a consultant here, Leanne Lavender. She's here with us today as a consultant with CBK Associates, and she is going to help us engage in this community activity, which we're really happy to have her share with us because it's going to share a different platform than Zoom, which we might be experiencing not just general Zoom fatigue, but Zoom fatigue with how we present information to our students. So we're really excited that this might be an opportunity for you to take something back to your classrooms too.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm super lucky to be here, and I'm super lucky to work with Kathy and Shay at CBK Associates. And I am a believer in service learning and the power that service learning has to make our kids see the world in new and different ways, and to equip our students to be the kinds of change makers we want to see in the world. So I'm really just so thrilled to be here and part of this meeting. And I am going to share my screen. And we are going to go to, here we go. We are going to go to an interesting tool that, again, as Marissa said, might be something that you want to play with a little bit if you end up still doing some virtual work with your students. I just encountered this tool and I really like it because I think it's one that can really help us to make our information visual for our students. And so what we need everybody to do, and you can do this on your phone if you have your phone handy, is yeah, awesome, Kathy, woohoo, is you can either scan the QR code here on the screen, or you can just go using any kind of browser that you like, Chrome or any other browser, go to slido.com. And once you're there, if you do that route, you can use that code 467000. And either of those two methods will get you onto Slido. And so I'll just give everybody a few seconds to get on there. And then we're going to do a couple of different things that I think will illustrate how Slido can take our thoughts and ideas and make them really visible and visual. And again, it's just a really nice way to interact in a virtual environment, which is cool. Can I get a thumbs up from people if they are on Slido successfully? Okay, great. I'm seeing a bunch of thumbs up. Okay. Okay, great, great. I think we're good to go. Awesome. I am going to go to the next slide. So you'll get a prompt here. And this prompt is, what words first come into your mind when you think about community service? So when you hear those two words, what words spring into your mind? And enter it in on your Slido. And you can enter in more than one entry if you would like to. If several words pop into your mind, just go ahead and pop them right into that. And as people do so, we're going to see a word cloud emerge, and we're seeing it there now. And as people put in things that are more similar, we're going to see some words take on a little bit more prominence visually as well. Wow, I love that caring is in the center there. That's a common word that comes to mind with community service. It's wonderful. Oh, I like these other words are wonderful as well. Volunteering, of course, volunteer, connections, change agent, collaboration, giving. Outside of school, change agent, action, relationships, non-curricular, wonderful, mutual benefit, communities, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. People are still putting things in. This is great. Let's just take a look and kind of note what's happening here with our word cloud, that we have non-curricular, caring, and connections kind of surfacing, and action. Woo, this is good. As words that are maybe the most common amongst the people here gathered tonight when we think about community service. That's fantastic. We're going to go to the next prompt. And this one, it'll be interesting to see how it compares. So I'm just going to pop to the next slide here. When you think about service learning, what are the first words that come into your mind? And let's do the same thing, popcorn style. Everything that's popping into your mind, just enter it there. And then we'll see what happens with our word cloud for service learning. And it's nice. The first words that come to your mind are often the most powerful because, it's like, woo, that immediate connection. Oh, this is great. Experiential learning, reciprocity, meaningful, clarity of why, integration, needs assessment, reciprocity. Yep, sustained, brainstorming connections, community. Yes. Meaningful, rewarding, reflection on there. Oh, this is great. People to people. Yeah. Interdisciplinary. Wonderful. Okay. Real life. Yeah. Miso. Woo. I love to see that there. That's awesome. I love miso, and Kathy and Shay and I were just having a conversation about miso, and it's just such a wonderful, wonderful way of doing action research. Okay, look at that. So we've got reciprocity, reflection, and connections emerging in the center of our word cloud. And Marissa, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing quite a different trend with this word cloud than I did with community service. Are you noticing anything when you look at the two?
I think for me, I think about it being student-centered, and not just student-centered, but that it being academic-centered. And I think that's one of the differences when you look at words like meaningful and interdisciplinary and experiential learning. You're seeing a lot more academically focused words because we're embedding those skills within the work that we do in the community too.
Yeah. I noticed that as well. And I'm not surprised because this is a community of educators who care about service learning. And so this is wonderful. What a great way to begin the meeting today. And again, just establish that foundation of the compare and contrast aspects of community service and service learning. I love this so much. I think there's a way for me to actually take screenshots of that when we're done too. So I will do that and send it out to everyone. And our next slide is this one. It's a poll. And in Slido, actually, you can do all different kinds of of polls. And so the type of poll that we're going to do now is a rating poll, and it asks you to sort of rate yourself in terms of your experience with service learning. When you think about your own practice right now with service learning, where would you put yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? So I'm just going to go to the next screen right now, and you can see that 5 is that established and sustainable level. You've been doing service learning for a while. You feel really comfortable with it. 4, you're on your way there. 3, you're like, yeah, it's in process. I understand the common language and the buy-in. I feel pretty good. Maybe I feel like I need more experience, or I like more experience. 2, on your way to 3, and 1, just getting started. You know about service learning. You're here because you want to learn more, and you're at that level where it's like, I'm just so curious, and I want to see what this looks like when I try to do this in my classroom. Okay, I'm just going to move that over here. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I'll just make sure everybody's had an opportunity to put their number in there.
And what I love about looking at this is it's very exciting for me personally, because we know that we can learn from people who are at number 1 and people who are number 2. Like, there's learning that happens across the continuum. And so we all just nurture each other from wherever we are and bring our own insights and stuff. And through all of it, we get stronger and we strengthen and advance our practice.
That is so true. And we're so lucky that in this group, 43% of the people gathered here tonight are experienced and established and have sustainable practices with service learning. So much to share. So I'm going to stop my screen share right now. And this is wonderful. So I hope that Slido is an interesting tool to introduce tonight as well. And it's a very easy extension. You just add it onto Chrome. And then when you're working on your Google Slides, it pops up as a little option, and you can embed your slides into whatever you're doing with Google Slides. Very, very easy. So, so thank you for letting me do that and try my Slido skills. I'm trying to get better at it as I go. So thank you, everyone.
That's great. Thank you so much, Leanne, for being a part of today and for offering another tool in our toolbox. And so now that we sort of laid that foundation for the spectrum of service, we can start to address the question of, if we know where we are along that spectrum, we can always start with exactly where we're at. That doesn't seem as overwhelming if you can just start where you're at and take one step forward. And so that's one of the next step of what we're going to do today. We're going to think about, okay, if I start here, what framework or what type of process can I use to make some actionable items to be able to move forward? And so we had this conversation ahead of time with one of our advisors, Josh Lesser, who's on the call with us today. And he's kind of one of our boots on the ground advisors. He's in the classroom, middle school classroom, and he is developing some service learning programs. And he shared with us his story. And it was really powerful for us to think about, how can we support him, and in turn, each one of you with your own individual needs, and help him move on to those next steps. And so today what we're going to do is Josh and I are going to dialogue and model a conversation about where he's at, and talk about what action items we can put into place to move forward. And we're going to do that within the framework of some change theory that Kathy has been working on within her consulting. It's called the plus delta. And so Josh and I are going to talk through his storyline of actionable items and change that he wants to make this year. And Donna and Kathy is going to put it within the framework of the plus delta. We're going to use this process as a model so that when we go into breakout rooms, everybody can bring their own story of where they are with their service learning program, and use this formula and this strategy to help them walk away with some things that they can put into place right now for achieving meaningful service. So Josh, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for telling us your story. If you can just start by describing the situation and telling us where you're at right now at this moment in time. But I think Kathy wants to add something.
Oh, yes.
Marissa, I think you wanted me to go over the plus delta process before we did, Josh. so
Okay,
people
yeah.
see it.
Let's do that so that when you're hearing Josh's story, everybody else can be thinking about, oh, how does it fit into the plus delta? Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, so I'm just it'll just take about 2 minutes, maybe even less. I'm going to share my screen to share what this process is. And in the resources, There's a document that you can download to follow, to see what this is about. I'm not supposed to be there. Hold on a second. Just 1 second. Screen share is going there. Okay, can everybody see this now? Okay, you'll know this is just 3 slides. That's how short it is. So the plus delta process I learned years ago from some teenagers and a college student after I finished doing a conference in Santa Barbara, California. They said, you can't leave after the conference. You have to do a plus delta. I said, oh no, I can leave. I wanted to go home. I had a 2-hour drive left home in traffic. And this one said, no, you can't leave. You have to do this. And I said, okay. And it was the best gift, one of the best gifts I've ever had. So what's a plus delta? You can use this all the time. This has its origins in business and in government. Apparently, Bill Clinton used this with his cabinet, and it's very simple. You just talk about whatever topic it is. Like for Josh, he'll be talking about bringing in more youth voice into his school and with his students. He's going to think about what's going well already and what he wants to change. Now, why do we talk about what's going well and then what you want to change? Often, let's think of like a faculty meeting. We talk about what's going well, and then we say what's wrong. When you talk about what's wrong, it becomes a griping session, like a downward spiral. In fact, if someone asks you what's wrong, most people look down and to the left. Instead, if you say delta, which Greek symbol for change, what you want to change, people look up and to the right because it's forward moving. So very simply, when you get in your breakout rooms, you can start with what's going well and what's something you want to change. Now, this was the end of the plus delta process. It didn't say, how do you make change? So I developed something called an extended plus delta, and that's what we're going to really work on today. Josh is going to identify what he wants to change. And then once he suggests that, he can think about, well, what are inhibitors for that change? And what are enablers? This really helps us get a good snapshot of what's in our environment and what's around us. And then as he talks, and this will happen naturally, he'll just talk about what kind of plan he may have in mind. And with input from Marissa and even others through the chat, people can talk about ideas for a plan to move him forward. And then support is the human element. We're not isolated. What human support do you need? How long are you going to put this action plan into place to look at what kind of evidence you might discover? This visual is already embedded in the agenda that Marissa has created. And so we'll be able to have access to that when you go into breakout room. So I'm going to just stop sharing and hope that this gave you enough of an overview of what we're going to be doing. Everybody kind of good with that? The process is what's going well, what do you want to change? Inhibitors, enablers, what's your plan, what support you need, and how long, and get that going. You can use this for, I developed this initially for personal development, but it's good for groups. I've been using it for about 15 years in all kinds of workshops and settings, and it's had tremendous impact. So I'm going to, oh, John's here. Hi, John. John just joined us from Shanghai, and I'm going to toss this back to Marissa. John, if you missed anything, I can fill you in later. Okay, toss it over to Marissa and Josh for this conversation. And Marissa, did you put in the chat the link to the agenda?
I did. So you'll see the shared document in the chat now, and that will be instrumental for you to open up if you're able to, so that you can, now that Kathy isn't sharing her screen, you can kind of see the formula for it there and how it is laid out in the breakout room notes, so that you'll be able to use that for your own purposes when you're telling your own stories there. So Josh, can you describe for us your situation?
Absolutely. My situation. How long do you have? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who I've not met, my name is Josh Lesser. I teach at Turning Point School. My main job is actually as the theater teacher. I'm the middle school theater specialist. But I've also taught humanities, and most relevant to this conversation, I inherited our 7th grade community leadership class this year. Community leadership is a class that used to be just for 8th graders. We stop at 8th. And it's taught by Matt Klein, who has been involved with ECSL in the past. And when the previous teacher who was teaching 7th grade community leadership left, it fell to me. So, you know, in talking to Marissa and Donna in preparation for this, I was basically just sort of describing how class was going rather than intending to lay out a big project. But it seems to dovetail nicely with the framework that Kathy has set up for us. So The way I started class, partly taken from that, was to look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which hopefully everyone's familiar with, but were a set of 17 goals that the UN voted on in 2015 to focus on, to sort of be the guiding force for change for the next 15 years. And it's a sort of a constellation of goals, many of which are intersectional, as everything is, but things like eradicating poverty, dealing with renewable energy, infrastructure, gender equality, access to education, et cetera, life above land, life below land. It's a framework that I think is really good for a couple of reasons. One is the resources are sort of built in on the UN website. We started by watching a video they produced in 2020 to sort of talk about what progress had been made and how COVID was affecting those goals, and it featured people from Placido Domingo to Greta Thunberg to Malala to Tandy Newton and Forrest Whitaker, and it was a nice way for the students to sort of see a snapshot of, as I told them, what a bummer all this stuff is. But from there, we talked through what the 17 goals are. And I asked my students each to select one that they found interesting to them. Turning Point is such that we only have 12 students per class, so not everyone got chosen, but most of them were covered. And then I asked them to, using the UN websites, do some research and create short presentations about their individual goal. So besides the sort of big concept of, say, zero poverty, which is goal number one, what are the individual goals within that? What has been done so far? And I also asked the students to try to come up with a personal connection, which is important for where we're going with this, and to design a logo, because, let's differentiate. So those were, as you can imagine, with 7th graders at the beginning of the year, we got a big range of success in those. Some that were very well researched and really engaged with what has happened and facts and figures, and some that were sort of like, it's bad that animals are dying, we should stop animals from dying, which is true. I agree with that. But we just finished doing the presentations. So to step back for a second, one of the things that is important to me about service learning in general, but this community leadership class is, I taught humanities, 6th grade humanities last year. And one of the things that really buoyed me through this past 18 months is how responsive a lot of our middle schoolers were to what was happening in the world, to the Black Lives Matter protests, to George Floyd, to climate change, especially to LGBTQIA issues. They just, it gives me a lot of hope to see how much further, certainly they are than when I was that age, but even how much further they are than a lot of the adults I know. And so one of the things that I have sort of tried to think about a way to do is to bring sort of the general awareness and sort of budding activism of a lot of these students and connect it to some actual work. What can we do at Turning Point, in Culver City, in Los Angeles, California, United States, the world, that connects, the stuff that they are able to talk about, the stuff that they know, that inequality exists, that everyone should be treated equal, that, there are problems with the way policing works, whatever it is, to actual action. Because, I think that's the problem for a lot of adults, but certainly in the classroom, and I had been challenged by some of my more savvy students, after the 10th time we had a conversation about, the George Floyd verdict, a student raised her hand and said, why are we still talking about this? Not because she disagreed, but her point was, so what? You know, what is, you know, me standing in front of the class telling them that like this is happening, you know, and asking them to process it, what does that actually do to make change? Which I think is a really good question for a sixth grader. So that has sort of been the question that I am trying to keep centered in this work. You know, community leadership is a class we meet. We're on a 6-day rotation. Community leadership meets twice in our 6-day rotation, and it's not graded. So, you know, buy-in is and will continue to be the biggest hurdle, and the one that I really am interested to hear ideas on how to crack. So after they selected their individual things and gave presentations, I then followed it up with a questionnaire, both trying to step back a little bit for them and proceed with this particular project. So asking them, you know, what the top 3 that they saw, which of the 3 goals, if we were to focus on a class, which would be the 3 that they would choose. And then also separately asking them to define leadership, to define community, to define service, sort of similar to the work Leanne was leading us through earlier. And now I have another resource to do that with, thank you. And then also, you know, asking them to posit what the problems they see are. And again, you know, I think anyone who has worked in independent schools, and especially with middle schoolers, will be familiar with this. The problem I find with those kind of open-ended questions often are students don't know how to pitch them between the answer that the teacher wants and the joke answer that pops into their head. So like, Mr. Lesser, can I say the biggest problem at Turning Point is that the food is bad? Sure, you can. I don't think we're going to address that in community leadership, but that's fine. Versus like, well, why can I just put climate change for all of them? Yeah, but do you think that climate change is the biggest problem facing Culver City right now? You know, and trying to get them to think critically through that, and also trying not to do that work for them, which is historically a problem of mine across disciplines. But, you know, these are things that I care deeply about, and I want to give them the tools without doing the work for them. So my hope is that between the presentations and these questionnaires that we will narrow down a couple of goals, whether they're UN goals or goals that we come up with holistically, either way. And then my thinking for the next step is that I will challenge them to find organizations that are already doing this work. Because again, my hope is to keep them doing the work and being engaged as many steps of the way as possible. While also, you know, this is something that I know very well from my practice as a drama teacher, that like, if I ask them to write a script, it's not going to be as good as if I hand them the script. And it's going to be a lot more work. But there are times when that trade-off is definitely worth it. And that's something that, you know, I can certainly find organizations that are doing work on climate change or, you know, poverty or food access in Culver City and LA. But for me to say, hey guys, we're going on a study tour to a food kitchen today, some of them will say great, some of them will say whatever.
Yeah.
And it'll be, you know, a it'll just be another thing that their teachers make them do. And so trying to figure out how to get them, many of whom are privately interested in this stuff already, to connect that to what we're doing in the classroom and take some ownership of it. And I neither expect nor need all 12 kids in both classes to do that, but it would be great to have a couple in each who really see that, you know, even meeting for 90 minutes a week, that we can make change. And that, again, you know, while, oh, sorry, I will just keep monologuing for as long as you like me, so please.
I think I'm sure that many of us are, you know, bubbling with ideas that might, apply to your situation. And it's so interesting thinking as a student. I try to put myself in the position of being a student in your class, and I thought that my buy-in would potentially even be better knowing that it wasn't graded. So I was like surprised
Oh.
you say, oh, the buy-in's not there because it's not a graded course.
Yeah.
But so now you're going to have to look for a different kind of buy-in. And I think you're on the right track with, having them select SDGs that they care about. And I think you could even potentially take a step back even further and do, some of the things we've talked about in previous meetings of just being in the investigation stage, not just investigating the topic, but having them investigate themselves.
Mhm.
Because let's say the topic that you end up picking that's, logistically viable, 2 to 3 of them that you go visit organizations, you still are going to have to find ways to have students buy in if it isn't the one that they were most interested
Right.
in. So applying their interests, skills, talents, and whatnot may give an extra amount of buy-in that wasn't there before, because they can at least apply their personal skills to it. And then another thought too would be like what you were talking about how the SDGs are intersectional, and how if you look back at everybody's surveys and, a few people selected something that isn't the ones that you're moving forward with, you could almost assign them a certain role as you would in literature circles and have them be sort of like the connectors, or maybe you'd call them the spokespersons for certain SDGs or something like that, so that they're always there to kind of speak up and say, well, this is how it relates to this and this is how it relates to that. So those are just a couple of ideas of thinking about how do you get each student's personal buy-in when they might not have felt passionately about that particular topic. So I would let Kathy, do you have any thoughts? I know you're on the back end thinking about how that fits in to the plus delta thinking map, but you might have some ideas before we head to breakout rooms in a minute or two.
Well, first of all, I love how I'm just curious, is there anybody in the room besides Josh who has experiences a similar thing with students? I'd love to just get a show of hands. If he's 1 in a million, or if this is something that you could say, this is something we all kind of have had in some way. Anybody besides Josh deal with buy-in, personalized? So this is a good topic that we can all talk about. So I think I love that Marissa brought up doing personal inventory and finding each student's way in. Also, having them find out what are their questions on any one of these topics. Is once you zone in on the 3 main topics, like what are their questions? Make a question wall or use the MISO process to help them discover questions. And my first thought was also bring in somebody who knows about one of these topics to be kind of like a, to bring in like, here's some realities to it, to give some case studies that are local, some real reality checks, so they really know what's going on in on a more personal level. It's not just this vague thing out there, but having 1 or 2 people, ideally, if you've got 3 top SDGs, bring in 2 people, one who represents one who represents another, and let them discuss some of the intersection between them, would make it even real beyond what the kids are thinking about. So those are 2 ideas. I wonder if we could take 30 seconds. If you have an idea for Josh, put it in the chat, take 30 seconds. And if you're already thinking of some ideas for him, put them in the chat. We'll take 30 seconds and Josh, see what we populate. And then I'm going to show you my screen when you're done with that and show you what I've created that's captures what you're talking about. Right, so I'm going to share my screen while y'all are doing this, just to give you a sense of what I was able to notate. Okay, hold on. Okay, can you see this? Maritza, can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay, so what you'll see is I put Josh's name up there. I showed some of the things he said were going well, and what are the things he wanted to change. One of the main inhibitors was the so what frustration of youth. that they think that they're not able to make authentic change. That to me is a very specific kind of inhibitor, because the topic I found is the bigger topic was buy-in. I need buy-in. So for the plan, identify top 3 goals, use sliders and models, challenge you to find organizations. I'm having some sound lag here. Anyway, so this is a way to start capturing these items. Is this helpful to you, Josh, to look at it in this way?
Sorry. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so what I'll be able to do is go back into the chat, get other people's ideas and populate them in here. So you have this master list that's like, whoa, can give you just a lot of weight.
This is great. I mean, if you guys can do this for every project I have, that would be, really helpful to me.
Well, we can. So ultimately what we're looking for is that he might decide he wants to put this in for 3 classes, or maybe like maybe 3 classes. He's going to try this out, and the evidence will be able to see, is there increased? He thinks he's going to get some increased buy-in, maybe he wants to lift it up by, let's say, 50% as the starting factor, and then with another 50%, a few classes more. So this becomes a realistic set of processes. He doesn't have to do them all. He can stagger them, but he has like a home where he can see them really clearly. When you write it down, you can make it real. So I'm going to toss it back to Marissa now, and she'll put you in breakout rooms. You're going to see that for each breakout room you're in, you have one of these charts set up for you. So you can see different colors, so each person can kind of use this and add things. So whatever room you're in, there's one of these little mapped out for you to use.
I recognize that there was probably a lot to be said, and the breakout room notes that I saw on the back end over here looked a lot different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've just had one space for each person to just kind of expand on whatever they're thinking about. But in this case, you were really able to break down your thinking a little bit into these segments, and hopefully it really breaking down your thoughts into that thinking map just gives you an opportunity to promote more forward thinking going forward. And no matter where you are on that spectrum, that continuum from community service through community engagement, that wherever you're at now, you're going to be able to move one step further. And we're really excited to look back and read some of those. So those are available for everybody going forward.
I just want to make one quick note. Is one of the reasons I developed this is that a lot of young people don't know what change really means. We don't break down change theory to them. And this is a process that young people really can understand. So Josh, you may be able to use this actual pattern in your class and teach that to them, which is very exciting. So I've used this to help young people see change. And one of the things I noted a few years ago is when I looked at it, is it's very similar to the service learning cycle. You investigate by seeing what the plus delta is, and then you start thinking the inhibitors and enablers, and then you start planning with support, and that's like preparation, and then you take action, and the evidence is reflection and demonstration. So it's very similar to that pattern, just breaks it down with different kind of categories. So I hope that's helpful. And yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
So many connections to be made between these different models. It's great to be able to play one off of the other sometimes. And we wanted to end playfully today. So Zara's going to take us through just a quick little exercise to help gauge our reactions and find out what happened in the breakout rooms.
Absolutely. So we have next to your record button at the bottom, reactions. So we're going to invite you to tell us what the experience was at the breakout room and your takeaway from today. How are you feeling? Please share your response.
So many options.
Josh, you and I had the same reaction.
Cool. Great minds, Kathy.
That's great. Yeah, and for me, it was a little bit of an epiphany because just because I think we have so much recordings of testimonials by students that can help us with buy-ins that we should share with everybody that is looking for this kind of content.
Since we weren't all, we'll look for these reactions to come on the screen, and we'd invite somebody that has a reaction that wants to share a bit more about why they chose that emoji. I'd love to hear from someone why they picked what they picked.
So somebody turns on your mic and just, oh, I see a child. somebody turns on the mic and share what that was like for you. We'd love to get a little feedback here. Bring it.
Fu, do you want to share with us your reaction? Mike, you need to unmute.
I was looking for usually there's like the hang loose thing, but we do this at our elementary school as connections. So I was kind of looking for that. Melanie knows. And that's it. It's shared connections. It's just, you know, we all struggle. We're all trying to do what we were trying to do. You know, just to be able to support each other and be able to provide different perspectives on something that we all are familiar with as we struggle to try to figure out how to implement programs and try to, you know, create great programs for our schools and our students.
I'll piggyback on what Fu said since we both work at the same school. I'm even just so grateful for the Plus Delta tool. I think that's awesome. I actually want to use it with the faculty at our next meeting. I love the, what was that little app? It was Slido.com. I think that's awesome. I also want to use that. And I really appreciated the breakout room conversation, and I've already connected with somebody that we're going to follow up via email with some resources. So I'm excited. I have a shot in my arm right now.
I got a shot in my arm earlier. So I'm really excited for you. That's fantastic. Be sure to download. There's a Plus Delta document on the resources that you can download. It's only 2 pages. I kept it short that you can walk through. And I apologize, they're not yet in Spanish, but at some point, I wish they would be.
But at the bottom of the document, after you go through all the breakout rooms, and this document's available for you forever at this point, there's a lot of resources. Kathy has some new things through Kathy, CBK Associates. A lot of the organizations that are with us today, Tree People and some of the others, have special events coming up that you should visit. Everything we use today, the Yo-Yo Ma video is on there, as is the organization. Culture Us, you know, which is from Britain and Japan. All of the tools are there, and the video will be available as well. Does anybody else have anything to question or to add? Again, I encourage you to reach out. Anybody who can reach out to us just with what you want to see next coming up in the meetings and what was most helpful. We just really feed off of what your needs are, trying to solve your questions so that your time is just priceless with us, because your time is priceless, and we respect and value that. So,
well, I entered late, sorry, but from the breakout room, I was thinking what a big challenge service learning might be, because it's not because it's that hard to implement in schools or to even do, but it's because it's switching what we were doing before. And I think that I can say this in my own experience. When I first heard Angie about service learning, I thought she was talking about something really weird and confusing and that nobody wanted to do. And then she figured out a way to start with baby steps and get people on board. And what we were commenting there was exactly that it doesn't, maybe we have this huge goal about how we wish we want service learning to be, but it's going to take time to get there. And as long as we get some people to start the example, to inspire others, it will just roll down like a snowball. I hope that's going to happen. And I see that's happening in our school. So I really wish that everyone can get on board and get there yet.
That sounds amazing. I think maybe Angie and team, we might need to do a profile on JFK in Mexico and how you've moved forward in this capacity, because that is so often the way that it unfolds. You have 1 or 2 people in classrooms doing it, and then it kind of turns the head of either other teachers or the administration or the parents, and all of a sudden it kind of the light bulbs start to go off. So thank you, Pilar, for being one of those people.
I just want to share that in our breakout room, what was really important was that we need to kind of almost justify why service learning is important, because I think that when that's missing, that's the biggest issue. So the buy-in isn't there from the student or teacher side. So I think offering the testimonials are fantastic, but also actually a visual coverage of projects with students will allow the kids to really latch on. Because I think, I'm looking at the 17 SDGs and it's just like, I think, bleh, and I'm an adult and I'm all over this. I love this, but I feel like it is so difficult to latch on to this simple and this concept and say, I'm passionate. It's so horribly clinical. Yes, it's concise, but it's not a passionate buy-in. So I feel like we need to speak the language that students hear and listen and want to be part of. And that's why when Josh said, kids want to talk about bad food at Turner, I'd start right there. What do you want to change
Exactly.
about